Welcome to Video Game Book Club, the show where we pick, we play, and we discuss a video game each and every month. I'm your host, JP, and always with me, Ben Tizzle Toops.
We are back. It is what? Fifth game? Is this the fifth game?
The fifth game. Wow, who
We
would have
got
thought?
this is a milestone. It's a milestone, man. We got to celebrate.
We're just,
What a game, by the way. What a
dude,
game.
I love this game. I love this game so much. I'm not going to say it, but I think this is one of my favorite games of the year. Maybe
Ooh.
the greatest game of the year. We'll see.
Oh. All right. Well, we'll get into that, I'm sure.
So our September game of the month was Nine Souls. And Ben, why don't you tell me a little bit about what Nine Souls is?
Oh man, it is so Nine Souls, very basically is sort of a Sekiro combat inspired Metroidvania. So kind of think Hollow Knight, which is something I'm sure we're going to talk about a lot throughout
Hmm.
this. Think Hollow Knight with like the kind of parry style combat of Sekiro. And it's an extremely cool game. The art style is amazing. The soundtracks are amazing. The story is crazy, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. And yeah, I mean, it's just overall a super, awesome game.
It feels so good. That's one of the first things that I noticed when we started playing this game. It looks stunning, like you said, it's super stylish. It feels great and it sounds amazing. I think at the beginning the game says like use headphones and a controller, and they're not wrong. Every boss fight sounds great, and everything that you do in the game, like we'll talk more about it, but when you parry, a perfect parry sounds incredible. Like I can still hear that
Yeah,
bing
yeah,
uh,
definitely.
in my head. But a little bit of surface level, the game tasks you to basically go around nine different areas and defeat nine bosses. So let's get into it, Ben.
Yeah.
Walk me through the beginning of the game.
Yeah, so the beginning of the game, it opens and you see our protagonist Yi, who's this little kind of cat guy, hanging off a cliff, and there's kind of a mysterious figure standing over him that kicks him off the cliff. Yi has is like missing half his face,
Mm-hmm.
and he, falls down, lands at the bottom of this ravine, and wakes up some amount of time later. We don't really know how much time, but wakes up in this cave with Xuan, who is this little kind of human looking guy,
My favorite.
kid, I guess, yeah, the best. Um, and Xuan is just with Yi. We don't really know a lot about their relationship, but as the game opens, you go with Xuan into the village, and you find out that there's this festival happening where
Mm-hmm.
certain people from this village that you live in are being sent to go live with the gods. And it seems like Xuan is one of the people that's been selected to do that. And so we don't really know a lot about anything to start out. Like, suppose there's mention of the souls as like these gods, right? And the people are going to live with the gods, but that's really all we know to start the game. And then something kind of crazy happens with the ceremony. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
So Xuan mentions that his parents are gone and that his parents already went through the ceremony. And I'm playing this game thinking like, okay, something happened to these people for sure, and something eerie and weird is going on. Yi is very stoic throughout this whole festival, and he's just walking and kind of taking his time, taking it all in. He knows what's going on. Three people are selected in the village, and they step onto a platform, and you're just watching. You're just a spectator, and all of a sudden a kind of helmet crane looking thing falls on top of one of the villagers, lifts them up from their head, and then twists their body falls and their head gets taken away, and my jaw dropped when that happened.
I think the cool part about that is that like is realizing that we as the viewer of the game can see that happening, right? Like
Yeah.
we can see the head being removed and the body falling. But from the villagers' perspective, they don't see that. They just see the person who's selected like go into this little capsule thing, like you said, and then just disappear and they're gone. They went to live with the gods. But we, as the viewer, see this like crazy, gruesome thing happening of like this decapitation, right?
And
So I thought that was, yeah, a crazy moment.
that's a big theme of the game too that we'll talk more about. It's so gory and it's so gruesome and it's so
Yeah.
cruel in every single way. Like I don't think there's a character that isn't cruel. Even Yi is cruel, and we'll talk about that. But
Oh,
of
yeah,
course,
for
Yi in
sure.
that moment he has a divide. Like should he or should he not do something about this? And Xuan, as Ben said, they've been living together for who knows how long, and Xuan kind of discovered him from his slumber that Yi had for however many years. And so he decides to rescue him, much to, again, like a conflict of his character. He rescues Xuan, and Shenong, which is another character in the village, and Xuan, I think, kind of like run away. And Yi now basically starts a whole alert system in this world that you don't really know what it is just yet.
Yeah, so that's like a crazy shift in the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because before that, you're in this kind of idyllic village with these like spiritual ceremonies and like very simple, very basic. But then after that happens, after Yi does his like, you know, karate style save of Xuan from the claw machine, um, you fall into this like crazy cyberpunk looking like underground techno factory basically, and it's like such a crazy stark shift I think from the previous. So that's like, yeah, a huge shift in like the early part of the game that really sets up what's about to happen, I
It
think.
took me by surprise a little bit. I had no idea how that was going to be the main art style of the game. This I've seen it mentioned as Tao-Punk instead of
Right.
cyberpunk, and it's I don't even know if there's any other way to describe it. It is like a marriage of cyberpunk and Taoism perfectly. They really nailed it. And so you go through this kind of tutorial opening area, and this is the ape men kind of section, ape men being the humans of the game. You learn to dash, you learn to parry, you learn to, fight, and you get to like your first mini boss, which is kind of like a small skill check. And it's not too bad, maybe you die a couple times, and then you beat him, and you go to the hub of the game, which is the 4 seasons pavilion. There's not 7 seasons. Is it seven
Yeah.
actually? No, it's four. Four
No, it's
seasons
four. It's
pavilion.
four.
Okay. The 4 seasons pavilion where Yi's personal AI assistant, which is basically just like, if you think Ocarina of Time, Navi, or any other games like kind of voice of reason slash navigator, recon kind of person or machine, that's who I think his name is Ruyi, which is Abacus. That's who that
Yeah.
is. And he's shaped just like Yi, which I find funny. That Yi kind of made himself in a machine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he is so happy to see you. He's been searching for you for 500 years. He had no idea that you were alive. And he kind of starts navigating what Yi is plotting to do, which is,
Well, I feel like it's unclear what Yi's trying to do. Like Abacus doesn't know for sure what Yi's ultimate plan is. Yi just kind of comes in and says, "I'm going after the souls," and Abacus is like, "Okay,
yeah.
I'll help you do that."
That's correct. Yeah, he at that point, and honestly, throughout the whole game, you don't really know what he's gonna do until the last moment. I
No,
think he doesn't
yeah,
even know, but he is seeking revenge. As
yeah,
Ben mentioned, this mysterious figure at the beginning of the game betrays Yi, and he's just seeking revenge. And he's like, I'm gonna go after every single soul, which is like the overseers of wherever you are, because you don't know right now where you are, or we don't know, the viewer.
hmm
Obviously, he does know. And so he starts by hunting down his former BFF, the first one of the first Solarians, or the first souls, excuse me. And yeah, and so Abacus kind of helps you get there. So from the in a navigation point of view, at this point, the map, it doesn't necessarily open up as a
Yeah.
Metroidvania kind of would. At that point, you can kind of go wherever, and then you would have roadblocks depending on what skills you have available. But in this
Hmm.
game, there's essentially always only one area that you can go at a time. Sometimes there's two, but it's pretty clear where you're supposed to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's like only one, there's only a couple bosses that I know of that can be uh, kind of jostled around in their position. Like I think it's the second and third boss that you
Yeah.
can pick. Um,
And also, I
but
think,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, for the most part, it's pretty linear. There is some backtracking, and it is like a huge sprawling place, and you can there's tons of like secrets to explore and stuff like that. So you can explore and do whatever you want, but in terms of the main story, I think it's fairly linear.
Oh, for sure. I think it's, yeah, they guide you, and Abacus kind of
Hmm.
guides you where you're supposed to go, and there's a clear path. Yeah, maybe a couple bosses, like you said. But you go through the first area, and it teaches you more again about the game. I feel like when I think about the first area, it seems so far away and so different from where the
Yeah.
game actually ends, and all the abilities that you unlock and how strong you are. I was looking at a like a every boss fight compilation, and when I think about
Same.
the first boss, I'm like, man, that boss was a chump, but it was so
I
hard
know
in the
it
moment,
looks
you
it
know?
looks so slow when you look back at it,
Yeah,
right?
it
Like
really
it looks so
does.
slow. You're like, damn, is this full speed? Like, is this what is going on? But it feel in because I think, and this happens with Sekiro as well, right? So this style of like the parry combat, the main style of combat is you parry a boss's attack, and then that parry builds up like a meter sort of, and you can use the meter to deal like additional damage to the boss using this talisman attack where you kind of dash through, attach a talisman to the boss or enemy, and then talisman explodes, dealing a bunch of damage to them. And so I think with that parry style combat, it it kind of takes a little bit to click in your brain, right? Because this is a Souls like at the end of the day. So I think a lot of people might come into the game and feel like, okay, I'm going to dodge around, I'm going to dodge through attacks, I'm going to look for openings and hit the boss. But if you play like that, you're not going to do very well
No,
in
not
this
at all.
game. Like you're going to get beat by the boss a lot. And it's the same with Sekiro. Do you feel like you had a moment where it really clicked in your brain of like, okay, I get it now. This feels good. Like I'm with it. I'm here.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be that first boss. You're right. They made this first boss in such a way where there's two attacks that you cannot dodge unless you parry. So the
Right.
way that they make the iframes of, you know, maybe your dodge's iframes are just narrow enough that if you even if you try to dodge perfectly, you're still gonna get hit by the, slash attack or whatever. So
Yeah.
I died a bunch. I think in hindsight, again, this boss is super easy, but on the first boss, I died a bunch, and that's when I had to
Same.
say, okay, no more dodging. You can
Hmm.
parry every single attack at this point except a red attack. So let's just go with it. But I honestly think that the game from the get go felt really good to me. I actually was playing a different game yesterday, that's a platforming game as well, and I was like, I'm so slow, and my jumps feel terrible and my dash feels terrible. Like everything felt bad just because of Nine Souls has spoiled me. Oh, and there's my little cat. That's Yi right
There's
there.
that's Yi in the background.
uh, Nine Souls has spoiled me because of how great the movement is. But no, I think the first boss definitely made me click with the game, and I didn't look back after that. I kind of flew through the game. I mean, it takes a while, right? I think my total time at the end was like 25 hours or so.
Yeah, I think
About
I think it was like 30 for me.
Yeah, so I went through it. But to your point, something that didn't click for a while. So the movement and the parrying that clicked uh pretty easily, but something that didn't click with me was internal damage versus like true damage. I didn't really
Right.
understand what internal damage was or how to make sure that I actually dealt all of that damage. So in the
Yeah. So do you
game,
wanna do you wanna
yeah.
clarify like what that system is?
So when you hit a character, you deal a little bit of true damage, but you mostly deal internal damage. So if you look at a enemy's health bar, it has two overlapping health bars. You have like your real health bar, but you have an internal health bar that will regenerate health unless you deplete that bar with a talisman attack, which I didn't know about. So I would see these
Right.
health bars go down, and I was like, wait, it's not really going down. It's like half of it is down, but half of it is up, and I'm not really sure what to do about this. Now, conversely, Yi has the same uh, health bar situation. You have your own internal damage that you take that you can regenerate as you maybe, there's a couple jades that make you regenerate your internal damage, or if you just are out of combat, you regenerate it slowly.
Right.
And that also kind of didn't click for me for a little bit. I don't know why I found that confusing. In retrospect, it isn't confusing, right? But in the first couple hours of the game, I was just kind of going through the motions.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there was like a moment where the game clarified that, like in like some sort of tip or something. I don't remember if it was explicitly stated. It might have been, but I don't know.
Maybe so. Throughout the game, there's tips as Ben mentioned, but also there's a kind of strange character that you meet in the primordial roots that teaches you how to kind of play the game and how to become like a strong warrior. You don't really know who that
Yeah.
is. You have an idea of who that is, but you don't really know until the end. Um,
Hmm.
and there's just so much information thrown at you at the beginning. Not like terribly so, overwhelmingly so, but there's definitely a lot to learn that yeah, I think that was just missed by me. But after that, the game becomes such a beautiful dance where you do a few slash attacks, or and we have an arrow attack later, and then you charge up your key charges, which are basically the power of your talismans, which is a attack where you attach some sort of kind of like paper bomb to an enemy, and then you kind of explode it. When you
Right.
do that, the internal damage goes all the way to zero to meet the health bar, and that's how you deal a lot of damage in the game. And
Yeah.
yeah, it just becomes parry, parry, attack, attack, parry, parry, talisman, and that dance is done throughout the whole game, and I never really got tired of it. It was awesome.
Yeah, no, totally agreed. I think I had the same experience as you with like the internal damage. I think it took me a little bit to understand exactly what that relationship was, but yeah, totally agreed. Once it clicks that's once the kind of the rhythm of combat establishes itself, it feels awesome.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. Listen, I died a bunch, against regular enemies at the beginning. I
Oh
was like, "Oh,
yeah.
I'm the best," and then you throw three enemies at once, and I'm like, "Oh, I suck." I don't know how to do anything. And again, in retrospect, after the final boss, I feel like I can beat anyone in this game.
Oh
But,
man. Yeah,
uh,
we'll
but no,
we'll
but the
get to
game
that.
is difficult. It's not one thing that I wanted to mention about the parrying is there's some games where the parrying is very difficult to nail down. Think like some Dark Souls games. It just takes a while, and it's so punishing if you do get hit.
Yeah.
In Nine Souls, the parry window is small, but it's not incredibly small. I find that they're pretty I don't know, it gives you enough time to react and to actually get a good
Right.
parry in. And even if you miss it by maybe half a second or so, instead of taking full damage, you take like half damage and a little bit of internal damage, which kind of helps you with that. And again, the parry sound is incredible. So they nailed that. So the game never really felt punishing. If I died, it was my fault. It wasn't the game's fault at all.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Because if you think of something like Elden Ring or Dark Souls or stuff like that, it has a parry mechanic, right? But
Mhm.
if you miss the parry, you're getting
You're
smacked,
screwed.
right?
Yeah,
Like you're
like
you're
it's
screwed.
over.
Um, but like you said, there's the window is not crazy, but like it's still very you have to nail it to get a perfect parry. But there is that little bit of forgiveness with like the kind of half parry, like you said, where you still get the chi charge and stuff like that. Um, but you're going to take a little bit of internal damage yourself.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that's done in Sekiro as well. And yeah, I think it was a really smart addition, definitely.
So you finish the first area and you find your BFF Kwafu, who is a very lovable character who kind of looks like a bear, but he's also a cat, a Solarian cat. He's just a chunkier cat. And you bring him back to the Four Seasons Pavilion, and at that point, you almost have everyone in your hub. There's one more character that you meet just a little bit later called Shenong, who all of these characters that are in your hub. There's another one in Chiyu also that you meet just a little
Hmm.
bit later. But let's just go
Yeah.
into it. So in your hub, you have these characters that help you navigate and kind of complete the game, right? So one of them, Shenong, is a villager and he increases your health if you bring him certain items in a very delicious way. Then you
Oh
have
my
Chiyu,
god.
who is a Chiyu, who is an ancient like machine or ancient weapon who looks kind of like a creature, like a monster, and he's enlightened and he's really funny and
Yeah.
funny and like he doesn't mean to be funny, but he I find him funny, and he sells you items, specifically
Yeah.
jades and some poisons, right, that you give to Shenong. Then you have Kwafu, as I mentioned, you unlock him, and he's your blacksmith, and he enhances not necessarily your slash attacks, but he enhances
Mhm.
your medicine pipe, which is your think your Estus flask or your healing item.
Right.
Um, and he gives you your first new weapon, your only new weapon really, which is the Azure bow, which is a kind of
Hmm.
uh, digital bow that sorry, my cat is going crazy. It's a digital bow that Yi can pull out and throw, a really strong arrow attack at enemies. You have a couple charges per rest that you do, and that's kind of your main people, your main friends, and you go out, explore areas linearly, like we mentioned, fight bosses and stuff, and then you go back and kind of hang out with them.
Yeah. So I'm interested how how much did you utilize the bow? Like, was it a key part of your rotation and stuff like that?
Definitely. I think at the beginning I didn't use it much, but
Hmm.
if there was a lot of enemies, like I mentioned, sometimes like there's four enemies that just out of nowhere appear and absolutely wreck your stuff.
Hmm.
If you use the bow, it's really easy to just kind of hit them, stun them a little bit, and then you do a couple attacks. There's a skill in the skill tree that you unlock that when you do a regular key blast, which is a 3 key charge talisman attack, you get a Azure Sand, which is a bow charge, back into your inventory. And so you can use the bow infinitely, basically, as long as you're doing
Hmm.
talisman attacks. And that was my main form of combat in against bosses. So I would go get my key charges up, do a key blast, and get a bow attack again, and then fire the bow immediately to deal more damage and stuff. What about you? Did you use the bow often?
I don't feel like I did. I
Mm.
used it more in the world than I did in like boss fights and
Hmm.
stuff, like to deal with multiple enemies and stuff like that. Um, but like I never found myself like investing heavily in the upgrade items or like the sand charges. Um, and like I kind of just I don't know, like I basically just forgot about it. Like I used it a little bit, but it wasn't like part of my combat, build basically, if you want to
Yeah.
call it that. Um, and that's my fault, like because it's a powerful item, and you can like it stuns certain bosses, and it can be used to like interrupt different channeling things. So it's a great like addition to the game. I just kind of forgot about it until like later in the game, I would say.
Yeah, I there's also 3 different arrows that you can use, and I didn't use
Hmm.
any other arrow than the first one. I mean, the other ones didn't really feel strong at all to me. But the first arrow with the little half-second stun that you can give bosses
Hmm.
or enemies, it just helps so much to get that key, uh, get that talisman attack in, and then get a charge back and kind of rinse and repeat. So I did that a lot. I was just stunning and doing my key attacks and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
but let's talk about kind of the progression through the game. We said initial area, then we go and get Kwafu, and you get your first few characters, and you kind of establish, okay, this is kind of how the game is going to work. You go out and you go area per area, boss to boss, and you uncover pieces of the story, and you kind of start piecing all this beautiful game together. The second boss that you go and check out is Gumang, which is a kind of play on the Ornstein and Smo boss, a kind of big person, little person, two monsters that you have to fight at the same time.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that fight?
I felt pretty good about it. So I think this is technically the boss that you can exchange with another one. I think you can go to the like the reliquary area with the old guy. I forget
And
his
get
name.
Yan Lao, yeah.
Yeah, I think you can go to either Gaomang or Yanlao.
I think you're right.
Which, by the way, we just need to say that a lot of these names, the names of the characters, are like localized. So if we are mispronouncing something or like saying something super funny, we apologize.
Yeah,
But
unfortunately, I'm
we're
not
doing our
Taiwanese.
best.
I am doing my
No,
best,
no.
and I wrote all the names down. I have them right here, so I'm gonna read them as I see them.
Yeah. But yeah, so but I went that way. I went to Gaomong first as well. And I thought this was a super cool boss fight. Like you said, it was sort of the two boss paradigm, I guess, where the actual bosses in the fight are not the sole boss, like are not Gaomang. She's just kind of hanging out on her throne with a little bell. And the actual people you're fighting are these ape men that have been like modified to be under her mind control, basically. And so what you have to do is kill one of them. And when you do that, she will come out with her little bell and she'll ring it and kind of reactivate them. And while she's ringing it, you can get your hits in.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a super cool fight. I definitely died, a fair amount of times to it. Before I learned how you can sort of juggle the two ape men
Hmm.
to like kind of optimize getting her, like you can get them both low and then kind of kill one and she'll come out and ring the bell and while she's ringing it you hit her a bunch and then she goes back and immediately you get the other one and kill him and then she comes back out so you can kind of optimize it a little bit to always keep her coming out but before like I learned that I was definitely struggling. How did you find the boss? Like did you struggle at all or no?
Though I feel like this one and Yan Lao are probably the ones that I struggle with the least. Just thankfully, I don't know, it kind of clicked immediately to me. Yeah, bring both of them low, kind of what you just said. The same tactic is what I did, and it worked
Yeah.
pretty well. And with the arrow, you stun her as she's healing too. So it was just, I feel like it wasn't too bad. It was easy, but I liked the end of this fight when Gaomang kind of she falls and then Yi that this
Yeah.
is when I realized, okay, obviously the game is gruesome and it's heavy and it's deep and it wants to have a big message. I didn't realize how flawed of a protagonist Yi is until maybe I got to this point where
Yeah.
he's brutal. He's a brutal person. He's not like a good guy, quote unquote, or maybe not yet. And basically, as Ben said, these two ape men are mind controlled by like a some sort of like neck brace, I think, that they wear. Gumang makes them wear it, and so they have no consciousness and they just do what she says. Well,
Yeah.
Yi puts that neck brace into Gumang's neck, and basically she also becomes rid of consciousness, or she has no consciousness, and she just becomes a puppet, and he just
Yeah.
leaves her. And I
Just
was
yeah.
like, dang, dude, like that is brutal, brutal.
Yeah. So I feel like at this point in the game, you still don't know a lot
Mm-mm.
about Yi's intentions, right? You don't really know what kind of character he is. Like you saw him save Xuan Xuan, which is like, okay, maybe he's got some kind of internal conscience. And then there's the interaction with Kuafu where you get a bit of the backstory about, them being friends and a little bit about that. And you see like, okay, he has good intentions. And then this happens and it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, okay, this guy is a little cruel and like there might be some stuff going on that we don't fully appreciate yet. So
A
yeah,
hundred
that
percent.
was that was a crazy moment.
Yeah, and throughout the first few areas too, I mean, this is only the second one, kind of, if you went this way. You get some sort of flashbacks, and also some of them are flashbacks, some of them are not, about your sister Hang, and she is so sweet and so pure and so the opposite of Yi, and you kind of start sympathizing with him a little bit because of Hang. She humanizes him in a way that if she didn't exist or if these flashbacks didn't happen, yeah, you would think that Yi is just a cold-blooded crazy person at this point in the game. um, Also, every time you go back to the hub, after you defeat an area, you have a bunch of items. You give items to Xuan Xuan. Xuan Xuan decorates the hub based on the items that you give him. You unlock certain things based on those items as well. And you start developing this relationship with Xuan Xuan, and he's such a awesome character, and he's so nice, and he is the representation of Hang, but in present day. And he always asks him like, what are you doing out there, and he never doesn't want to tell him because he knows that what he's doing is messed up. So
Yeah.
that's also that kind of like balance that the whole game is about balance. Is starts appearing, and then you go and uh go to the path of Yuan Lao, which is a
Hmm.
he's an old soul, one of the oldest ones, and he is in charge of preserving the past and preserving like the history of the relics and stuff of Penglai, which is the world that all of these Solarians come from.
Yeah.
And he's all about like traditions and keeping with traditions, and everything has to be the same as it always was. And Yi really doesn't like that at all. And you start seeing some flashbacks about his kind of home life. His parents and Hang were very Taoists, and they didn't really like science, and they just wanted to live like the way that life was supposed to in their minds, which is just kind of like the natural flow of things. And Yi hates that. He's like, no, we have to like advance, the the Solarian race, and we have to become like the best scientists that we can be, just as the you know previously the previous scientists from hundreds and hundreds of years ago were. Uh, but I just found that super interesting because Yan Lao has a little bit of both. He has like the traditional sense, but he's also like a scientist who wants to do the sciencey stuff that Yi wants to. So that's when you start understanding Yi's conflict of, okay, what is tradition and what is advancement, and how are you supposed to actually live your life? Like, when I'm old, am I also gonna reminisce on the good old days or whatever and want traditions because that's what I miss about my life? Or am I gonna be always seeking advancement and always seeking the next best thing? I don't know. So I don't know. I thought the game was really cool. It just wanted you to keep thinking about these things, but in the end, you absolutely destroy him. And uh, he that fight was cool. He has a kind of machine that he controls, Yan Lao, because he's really old and feeble, and so it's not like he has, I don't know, power to fight or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, you ended up just lasering his head off or something. So super brutal again.
Yeah. Yeah. So I agree. I feel like something you just touched on is like one of the main themes of the game, definitely, is that kind of push and pull of like nature versus technology. And it's like kind of the thing that's most talked about because you basically have Yi and all of the souls, as you kind of slowly come to learn throughout the story, they're these scientists pretty much that are trying to figure out a way to cure a deadly disease that's like spread throughout their population. And so there's this like push of scientific advancement to try to cure them and all this stuff. But then there's also the other side that's represented, like you said, by Hang, where she is more in touch with nature. And her outlook is basically, if nature caused this virus, then like it might just be our time to go, basically. And that's like something I'm sure we're going to talk about later with the ending of the game.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that's where you start to kind of pick up that theme of the game, definitely.
100%. Yeah, I think at this point you still don't know exactly where New Kunlun, which is the where you are right now. You don't know what it is
Hmm.
per se.
No.
You don't know what happened to your planet Penglai or why you left. Kind of. I mean, you can sort of piece it together, but at this point, you just know that there's a virus going on that
Hmm.
infected all Solarians. You don't know where this virus came from, but you know that it basically has no cure. Um, and yeah, you just want to fight all the Solarians right now.
Yeah.
You
That's pretty
know a
much all
little
you
bit
know.
of yeah, you know a little bit about how before this scientific like advancement, there was a peacetime. Before
Hmm.
the peacetime, there was a turbulent era, and the turbulent era was another era of scientific advancement. And then Lear, who kind of started that, also cut it off and made this peacetime that was very Taoist centric and no science,
Yep.
just nature. Live your life as like normal as you can, basically, and just let the course of life kind of guide your
Yeah.
way. And then again, the third part is no, now Yi is part of this new guild of scientists that want to like advance and do crazy stuff. They work
Right.
for the Fangs, I think, which are like the wealthy, um, the wealthy guild, I think, of Penglai. So that's kind of what you know right now, a little bit, kind of piecing it together. And then at this point in the game, you have this sense of urgency. This whole time, Abacus tells Yi like you don't have a lot of time. Like they're gonna figure out what you're doing. You have to keep going, keep going, keep going, and you just yeah. The whole game kind of pushes you forward, and you go to the fourth soul, which is Jaquan. And
Hmm.
when you go and fight Jaquan, which this area, I didn't love it too much. I mean, it was because it was difficult and
So do you mean the factory area or do you
the
mean the
factory
prison?
area.
Okay.
The factory area. No, prison was fine. The
Hmm.
factory area, it's really big. Most of these areas you go through like room to room and like you discover loops and shortcuts and secrets and it's always fun. You can get around easily. In the factory, the rooms are pretty big. They're kind of giant, and every maybe 10 seconds or so, there's a attack that happens on the whole screen that is just like
Hmm.
fire everywhere, basically. And you get
Yeah.
hit, and if you don't find these little protective orbs that you have to hit to kind of give you a little area of protection, then you're gonna die basically. And I just
Yeah.
found that a little difficult. It wasn't annoying because I love that every area was unique, but it was definitely like
Hmm.
a harder area to navigate than others.
Yeah, total that area was pretty brutal, definitely. That and it was one of the more I feel like unique like set designs, I guess you could call it, in the
Hmm.
game, like that kind of factory area. And it was frustrating. And like there's like you said, there's these big screen wide attacks where if you don't get where you're going by the time you need to, you're gonna get burned up pretty much. Um, and at the same time, there's all these little like enemies needling you and trying to force you to get out of the safe space and stuff like that. So it's a really tough area, but it's also the area where you learn this kind of unblockable parry. So previously in the game, certain bosses and harder enemies have these kind of crazy unblockable attacks where they wind up and it kind of glows red and you have no way of dealing with it. If you try to parry, you're just going to get smacked. So you just have to dash basically. But in this area, you learn that there's this special kind of parry you can do that blocks those attacks. And then you can use that parry, that special parry, to destroy like the mechanisms that are causing the big burning screen wide attacks to happen. And I thought that was really satisfying. Like that moment, like learning that and then using it to disable those, I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was very cool, and it opens the game up. It
Definitely.
finally you finish your kind of three parry system. You have your air
Yeah.
parry that you learn at the beginning, your regular parry,
Mm-hmm.
and then the unbounded counter, which is that like
Right.
kind of parry that you have to charge
Mm-hmm.
to beat the red attack. So it was really cool. At that point, you kind of like finish. that combat system. Like, all right, now for the second half of the game, it's just me versus the world, baby. Like I can
Yeah.
do everything.
Yeah.
So Jaquan was hard, and you're meant to lose the first encounter that you have with him, and he imprisons you basically. At this point, everyone knows that Yi was supposed to die. He was supposed to be dead, and this figure that you still don't know, but you probably at this point maybe know who it is, was meant to kill you, but you
Hmm.
didn't die because the primordial roots, which are it's this like plant that governs your original world, and it gives energy to
Yeah.
your to everything, to the whole world, but also to like your science artifacts, saves you every time you die. It just revives you, and that's why this is a soul cycle, and that's why you keep reviving. So Jaquan knew that and was like, okay, instead of killing you, I'm just gonna put you in a prison, and
Torture you.
yeah, torture you forever. And this is where you realize, and you get a flashback of kind of the first time that Yi had this encounter with the primordial roots. He loved to experiment when he was a kid, and he created this butterfly or dragonfly looking digital machine for his sister Hang. But the experiment goes bad, and it explodes, and he jumps to his sister to protect her from this explosion, and he dies. He like
Yeah.
it's super brutal too because they're just kids, but like they show him like half of his body is like cut off of him, and
Yeah.
Hang, who is very in tune with the primordial roots and talks to it, and has like a relationship with it, starts crying
Hmm.
over your body, and because of that, the root heals you and brings you back to life, and that's the first connection that you have with the primordial
Right.
roots, and why you have like that ring in your body.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a really cool moment. Definitely.
Yeah.
Um, so that happens while you're in prison, right? I think you
Yes.
get
Yeah.
that flashback.
You
Yeah.
get that flashback, and then the nymph like takes you out of the prison. So I think that that's the moment
Right.
where you realize where that nymph came from, and stuff.
Yeah.
And
The prison I thought was like a really cool area because like you said, once you get to that point, you have pretty much your full kit, right? You have all your attacks and you're starting to get like the flow of the game. Definitely, you're getting into it. Um, and then you get to prison and you're tortured for whoever knows how long, and all of that's taken away. So
mm,
like you can parry, I think, but like you can't really dash. You can't
yeah,
really like do a lot of stuff. So it basically becomes a stealth game for a little bit.
yeah,
You kind of have to like dodge around and hide in like vases to avoid stronger enemies. Um, but yeah, then you complete the area, you get your strength back, and you head to face off again with Jaquan, right?
yeah. When
So
you
you go ahead.
Yeah, so if you explore the area fully, you find an item that can help you fight Jaquan. So Jaquan is
Yes.
all about like strength, and he's like the brutal, kind of like raw strength Solarian, and that's what he
Right.
represents. But he
Because
just
he comes from a line of like militaristic, like very cruel, brutal, like that's what his family lineage is these like brutal people.
and he can't get enough of it. Like he wants to get
Yeah.
stronger and stronger and stronger, and so he kind of like experiments on himself by changing his like DNA structure to become even stronger and stronger. But there's an item that you find that is called the gene eradicator, and you can
Yeah.
use this item when Jaquan is like in his little pod or whatever to kind of mess up with his genes, with his DNA, and so he'll kind of cough or something in the middle of battle, and
Hmm.
give you better openings when you fight him. Now, whenever I went to fight him, I found that little thing, and I found it. It was like, oh, put the gene eradicator here, and I knew that it meant that it was gonna help me in the fight. But I wanted to see how the fight would be without using the gene eradicator, so I didn't use it. And so I got my ass kicked like in the first time or something.
Oh,
And
what
so
a
I was like, all
hardo.
right, I'll use it, whatever. It doesn't let you use it anymore. So you only can use it the first time that you go. And after that,
Oh man.
I didn't get the prompt to use it. So I had to fight him without using the Gene Eradicator. And that meant that I
Wow.
also didn't get an achievement because you get an achievement if you
Uh,
use it, which was annoying, but it's okay.
and that's big because I feel like this boss was like kind of the difficulty spike.
Hmm.
Like it was a lot harder than the previous couple.
Yeah. Oh,
So
for
yeah,
sure.
I used it in my playthrough. I used it. But what like do you feel like it was a really tough fight without doing that?
Yeah, I think at this point, yeah, that's the hardest boss. I gotta say, I did well. Like, I mean, maybe I died like 5 times or so. I think at this point, I was super in tune. No boss felt extremely difficult except the last boss to me.
Oh man.
At that point, I was like, yeah, oh my god, I'm so good. Like, doing this and that. I mean, I died like, like I said, like you just after you learn the patterns, it just would click in my brain. I was like, all right, boom, 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 boom. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, I was upset about the Gene Eradicator. I wish I would have had it. But no, I enjoyed it. But definitely, it's a lot harder though. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like Jaquan is so throughout the game when you're going through and defeating the souls, right? When you get their soul seals, which is what you need to like unlock, the power to control everything in New Kunlun. When you get their soul seals, you also have like a little flashback and a little look
Yeah.
into their lives that show you kind of what what occurred to like put them in this position that they're in basically. And a lot of times it's like a little tragic, right?
Super
Like
tragic.
there's
Yeah.
like Galmang, who what we've encountered was this like crazy mind control person that's like genetically modifying everything and all this crazy stuff. In her flashbacks, she's using the genetic modification to like create more sustainable crops and to like feed the people of Penglai. So, and I feel like that's something that you notice like throughout the
Hmm.
playthrough is that these bosses seem evil, right? But when you look at it, they all kind of have this a little bit of a tragic backstory that kind of builds up to put them where they are now.
Yeah.
And Jaquan's no different, right? He was just like a kid that was kind of picked on when he was really young, and he resorted to using these genetic modification things to make himself this crazy strong guy, which ultimately ends up being his downfall. But it shows you kind of that tragic arc of some of the soul bosses, and it also makes you think about your own tragic arc of Yi. Like,
Hmm.
am I a good person? Am I acting in like the best who am I acting in the best interest of right now? Like what occurred in my past? And you're getting that through the flashbacks with Hang and stuff like that, showing you what happened in Yi's past. But it kind of makes you consider your own kind of morality in the situation too, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like you could have grabbed any Solarian and put them in Yi's position, and Yi could have been like that boss or that like evil guy that you have to defeat. And like you
Yeah.
said, you would see his flashback and say, "Man, he wasn't like a bad person. It was just the circumstances of his
Yeah.
of life. I
And
mean,
it's yeah, and it's worth noting, right? Because a lot of the bosses seem very evil. Like
yeah.
Jaquan seems evil,
Oh
and
yeah,
Gamang seems evil. Yi is evil too,
yeah,
and
totally.
we'll get into why later. But
Yeah,
he is evil,
he is
like
evil.
absolutely. Well, we'll save that for a little bit, I think. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just I think that kind of progressive buildup in the game is huge for the narrative, I think.
So at this point in the game, there's a part that I didn't enjoy super much because I felt like again the game had incredible pace. I loved going area to area, from Kwafu, Gaomang, Yanlao, Jaikwan, the prison, and I'm like, give me the next thing, like let's go.
Yeah,
Well, the village is attacked, and there's this small, maybe hour long arc where you have to go and save the ape men, basically, kind of, or aid them. At this point, Yi's still like undecided what he wants to do with the ape men. He loves Xuan Xuan, but that's it. Like no one else, he doesn't really care about anyone else. But Shenong and Xuan Xuan are like, dude, you gotta help us. And so there's there's this back and forth that you have to do from the Four Seasons Pavilion all the way to the village, then back to the Four Seasons Pavilion, then to the Galactic Dock, then back to the Four Seasons Pavilion, and I hated that so much. I felt like it was done poorly, and that's my only gripe with the game was that maybe hour long section where
Did you not have teleport access during that? I forget.
I don't think so. I was running back and forth, back and forth. I don't
That
know.
there's a couple times where it disables like the node teleportation.
Yeah,
I can't remember if that was one of them, but
maybe yeah, maybe it was my own fault, but I don't know. And then at the end, like Shannon tells you that there's this like worm that you have to go fight or whatever. And there's like, or wait, no, he doesn't say worm. It's a beast, right? There's a beast I have to go fight, and I was
yeah.
like, all right, okay, at least I'll get like a fun boss fight for all of this
Yeah,
hour long thing. And bro, it was a worm. I'm like, dude,
yeah.
this is not a boss fight at all. It's not even count as a mini boss, you know. So this section of the game I felt was kind of meh, but
Mhm.
the aftermath of that is that you get back to back to back amazing areas, interesting
Yeah.
areas, and super fun boss fights. I think from Jaikwan, every boss fight after that is S tier. It's incredible. And different levels of difficulty, but all of them high level of just content. It was so good. I think the game at this point not that it sucks, but you've been putting in like 15-ish hours of game time. But the
Mhm.
last 10 hours, my god, it's so rewarding. Like everything
Yeah.
from there, I just couldn't stop playing. I would play for hours, at a
And
time.
that's I feel like that same point is like where the lore really picks up as well, where
Hmm.
you start learning a lot more about what's going on. So and that starts with I think the next major slow boss, which is Lady Ethereal, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So you go into this. There's like you get a weird kind of signal. Abacus picks up a weird signal, and you go to investigate it, and you get teleported into this weird soulscape where you're at like a bathhouse pretty
Yeah,
much, and
yeah.
there's like all the characters in the bath, and Lady Ethereal, who's one of the soul bosses, is there, and she just seems a little out of it, like not aggressive, just like out of it, kind of ditzy, and all the other Solarians that are there at the bathhouse are just like having a good time, chilling, whatever. Um, and then it like really
Hmm.
gets pretty crazy.
Hmm.
Do you wanna talk about that area a little bit?
Yeah, the area is super weird. There's no escape from it. You are stuck in this soulscape, which is like the dream, like a dream area or a dream cognition situation that
Yeah,
every Solarian can create for themselves. And so you are in Lady Ethereal's kind of cognition. And the area goes like this. You check out the bathhouse, you try to talk to Lady Ethereal, she makes no sense, like Ben is saying, and then you go through a series of like platforming challenges, and then you go back to that bathhouse, you talk to Lady Ethereal a little bit more, and then things start becoming weird every time you do
yeah,
another platforming challenge and you go back to talk to her a little bit more. You start seeing the Solarians in the bath acting funny, acting strange. You start seeing in the background of the soulscape some really disturbing images from dead Solarians or really I don't know really weird stuff.
yeah. And they introduce it in a really interesting way. So like you said, there's all these like platforming challenges between times, between loops. Um, and in parts of it, there's these little kind of floating nodes or things where you can touch it and it'll like open up sort of a alternate version of the like soulscape you're in, that just occupies like a portion of the screen, and it has like different platforms and stuff that you use in the platforming. But so the main like area you're in is very dreamy and very like kind of pink and all these kind of light colors and stuff like that. But when you open up these little pockets, the background like it's horrifying.
Oh my god.
Like you said, it's like there's like dead people, and like the art style is totally different than the rest of the game. Like there's some truly kind of horrifying images in it,
Super disturbing.
and it's just like such a crazy moment where you're like seeing all these things, and like you said, the Solarians are like gradually losing their minds, and Lady Ethereal is gradually losing her mind. And yeah, it was pretty freaky. And I think it's worth noting that the publisher of this game, or the creator, I think Red Candle Studios, made horror games prior to
Mm.
this game. Like
Mhm.
they make horror games, and that really comes through in this moment because it was freaky.
Super freaky, man. And then when you finish all of these loops and you're tired of this and you're like, what the hell is going on? Then you have to smack the shit out of Lady Ethereal, which feels bad because you have a sense that like they're friends and that Yi and is like was excited to see her and was like, oh my god, like Lady Ethereal, like we're back like together, like this is what's going on, like help me, you know. And so you have to like kind of hit her and hit her and hit her to wake her up, and then you start fighting Lady Ethereal's kind of devil form in this soulscape because she doesn't want to wake up, you know, she doesn't
Yeah.
want to leave her soulscape. And so you get the first three phase boss fight, and it is incredible. This fight
Yeah.
is so amazing, it's so fun. And earlier I mentioned about how this game makes you like dance with its parry system and movement. This is a dance. I mean, there's no other way to
Hmm.
put it. There's Lady Theory in the first phase is just one, you know, one boss, one person, and she is like floating. She's like a butterfly kind of, and she does certain attacks, and then you have openings so you can hit her. Well, then she kind of like transforms into three different, or she splits into three different bosses, and two of them now are fake. And so if you hit them, they just disappear. And so you have to keep parrying and keep dodging until you can hit the real Lady Ethereal and then keep doing damage. And then on the third one, there's seven of them. Seven Lady
Damn.
Ethereals that you have to fight, that you have to keep dodging and keep hitting. And if you don't hit them, they will keep attacking you. So
Yeah.
it's not just, oh, I can parry, parry, parry until the real one comes up. First, you don't know which one's the real one. And two, if you don't hit them to make them disappear, they will keep attacking you. So it just makes you play the game perfectly. And I enjoyed it so much. I think the one thing is it's a really long boss fight. So if you die in the third phase, ooh, it's a little bit of a time waste. Like not time waste, but like you have to put some time to get back into that spot and back into getting it. But yeah, I loved it. It was super enjoyable.
Yeah, I think I struggled with this fight because there's like one particular move that she does in the third phase where it's like a big screen wide attack that
Mm-hmm.
like kind of explodes the arena. And for my first few attempts, like I just had no idea how to dodge it, basically. And like you said, it's such a long boss fight that by the time where I was getting to the third phase, I had like, perfected the first two phases. Like I was getting through those without getting hit. And then I get to the third phase and it's like I'm trying to figure out how to dodge this big attack. And, when you're learning it, you're going to die a few times and it,
Mm-hmm.
it takes a while to get back to it. But yeah, like you said, this boss fight was super cool, definitely a dance, and it reminded me a lot of like the Mantis Lord fight in Hollow Knight, where it starts out very slow. It's just one of them. You learn the move set, and then it gradually introduces like more of the same
Mm-hmm.
enemy. So like the move set stays the same, and the things you're doing kind of stays the same, but the tempo ramps up because there's more people doing it, pretty much. And yeah, but I had a pretty like the ending of this fight for me was pretty crazy because I had zero like flask charges remaining or pipe charges. I was like very low on HP, and I just like locked in and just like perfect parry everything and barely pulled it off, and I was
Let's
so
go.
relieved. It was crazy.
Dude, you're cracked. You're the best. That feels so good, especially when you like defeat a boss fight with like a talisman attack, and it's
Yeah,
so like
yeah,
flashy, and it becomes like black and white, and yeah, it's God. This game is so good.
yeah. And
um,
I think this is another situation where you're looking into the character's backstory and realizing like how tragic it is.
it's
Because
incredibly tragic.
Lady Ethereal, her job on the council was to develop this soulscape, which is basically like a stasis system where the Solarians can kind of go unconscious and just live in like a virtual reality for however long. But there's all this pressure for her to like perfect the system, and so she's putting people under, and they're not waking up. And when they do wake up, they've like gone crazy in
Hmm.
some instances. And so she's racked with all this guilt while at the same time telling the rest of the council that it's going fine because, there's this pressure to perform for her. And Yi himself is kind of pressuring her as well and doesn't know that that's happening in the experiments. So you really kind of feel for her in that instance, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and then she puts herself in her own soulscape, and she
Hmm.
just kind of goes crazy too.
Yeah.
I think they don't want to leave. Like they enjoy the virtual reality world more than like the real world, and so when they wake up, it's kind of like a shock to be back in
Yeah.
like the real world, which is not fun. You know, they have this virus going around, all of their families and friends are dying, and it's kind of chaos in Penglai. And so, why would you want to live in that world? Like, bring me back into the soulscape, you know? And so,
Right.
yeah, it's super tragic, and Yi and Lady Ethereal are pals, and he doesn't treat her well, and so at the end you disconnect her, and
Hmm.
that's kind of that. You get her soul, and you at this point there's two ways you can go. So you can
Hmm.
either go to G, which is a not Yi but G with a J,
Yeah.
who is a really ancient and kind of mystical and kind of secret-ish character that kind of pops in and out of the game. And
Hmm.
you can go to his area, or you can go to the super fun district at the top right, I think, of the world, where Fuxi and Nuwa are. So
Hmm.
I went up to Fuxi and Nuwa. I didn't go CG, so I went up, and this is called, I wrote it down here, the
I
Empyrean
think the
District.
Empyrean district.
The
Yeah.
Empyrean District was, I think, my favorite district. I just thought it was so cool. I thought the music, the area in general, I was bopping. I mean, I was playing the game like this. I was like, da da da, you know. It was awesome, and also kind of weird. You know, there's like some zombie creatures in this area. They are all Solarians, and you can tell because they're like cat-like.
Hmm.
You go through the whole area, and you find a crazy like Project X type party going on in this like room, and every Solarian is like completely messed up out of their minds because obviously they are, yeah, not, I don't know, they're just disassociating from what is
Yeah.
going on in their race. You know, it's super
Right.
weird.
Yeah, and I think this is where you learn a lot about kind of what exactly is happening in the game.
Hmm.
So here you learn that there, as we know, there's like a virus that's infected the Solarians that they're trying to find a cure to. Um, and here we kind of learn that Eigong thinks she synthesized a cure for the virus, and so she starts testing it on people. But there's like a failure rate of the virus. I think it even says like 90% failure rate. Like it works in some instances, but when it doesn't work, it transforms the Solarians into these zombies pretty much. This like hive mind of zombies that are effectively immortal
Yeah.
because you can kill them and they just come back if you don't have the right equipment. So you learn a lot about sort of the story of the game and how it's kind of unfolding and what they're trying to do, what Eigong is trying to do to cure the virus. And yeah, a really cool boss fight. What was your experience with this boss fight?
Besides Aegon, this was my toughest boss fight.
Really?
Yeah, out of all of them, this one I struggled the most with it. I think I spent the most time with this one. Again, nothing compared to the final boss,
No.
but yeah, no, the fangs was hard. This boss fight was interesting in that there's no dodging the uh, Fuxi's attacks. I think Fuxi's
Hmm.
is the big guy. Maybe no, I don't know.
Yeah.
You can't dodge him. So he essentially has a couple of attack moves that kind of like he attacks forward, but then he like moves his hand back, and I just felt that I could not parry it or
Same.
dodge it for the life of me. I thought the hitbox was too big. Maybe I didn't understand like the perception level a little bit of like how big he was compared to how small I am. And
Yeah.
finally I beat.
Because that specific move, that like, you know, like you said, he kind of comes forward with an attack and then like drags
Drags it
his
back.
hand back. And but he doesn't always do that. So
Hmm.
sometimes he comes forward and it just doesn't happen. So you have to listen for like a really specific audio cue that tells you that that's about to come.
Yeah.
And yeah, I struggled with that as well. Like even when I beat the boss, I think I still got hit by that move a few
Oh,
times.
100%. Yeah. Most bosses, like once you figure them out, God, it just feels so good. You beat them and you do so well. Like you said in Lady Ethereal, you barely got through her, and it was the same for me with this one. I barely got through, and when I did, I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh God, okay, get me out of here." I'm ready to go to the next thing because I cannot with this one. I was getting frustrated. No other boss made
Yeah.
me frustrated. This one, I was like, "I need to go." But
Yeah.
this one is also super tragic. You beat them, and you realize that Fuxi has been dead this whole time, and Aegon had promised Nuwa that the cure that she created could work on Fuxi because he had been infected with the Tianho virus, and it doesn't at all. And he's, like Ben said, he just has become like a hive mind zombie creature that Nua was just trying to keep alive and keep injecting him with the same cure over and over and over again, and he had become irrecognizable.
Yeah.
So he's dying, and Nuwa kind of goes up to him and like hugs him and is like sad that he's gonna die. And then when Solarians die because of the Tianho virus, they kind of become a flower, but the flower has spikes, and
Mm-hmm.
so he dies and effectively like pierces her with his like flower spikes, and then she also dies, and they become a twin Tianho fruit
Yeah.
flower thing. And man, it's just so tragic. Like no character has a good ending in this game.
No.
Um,
No.
and from there, there's a couple puzzles in this area that are pretty cool. The bell puzzle, I feel like it's a famous one. How did you find that puzzle?
Which one? There's a
So
couple
there's
bell
yeah, so there's a
puzzles.
bell puzzle where you first find G, but there's a puzzle
Yeah.
in this area
Yeah.
as well,
Yeah.
just to kind of exit the area or go to another location. I can't remember exactly where it takes you, but there's a
Mm-hmm.
painting on the wall
Yeah.
that right before it that you have to kind of figure out what to do with.
Yeah. So that took me a little while, definitely. The first thing I did was just to try to play like the same series of notes as I did on the other one, and obviously that didn't work. Um, but eventually, I kind of explored around and found the painting and was able to like just through trial and error like piece together how to do it. But it was one of the cooler puzzles in the game, I think.
Yeah, I like this one. The first puzzle that Ben was talking about, I actually did that last. I didn't realize, like, I forgot about it, honestly. I just kind of like, oh, I found it for the first time. I was like, I don't know what it is. I'll come back. Fast forward 20 hours later, and I'm like trying to finish the game, and I'm like, okay, I'm definitely missing something here, and it definitely has to do with these bells. And throughout the game, you find little kind of lore, um, not items, but like just stuff in the world that like will give you a backstory of what that is or how that came to be, or some scientific exploration or something that they did, and you kind of learn a little bit about it. So I thought that I was reading those things over and over and over again because I thought that that's where the key to the puzzle was, which it's not. It's in your key items side somewhere else in your inventory where Xuan
Yeah.
Xuan has this like flute, and he plays it really well, and he plays a old Kunlun song, and you have to use those notes to do the puzzle. So yeah, that one I didn't do, but then the one in this side, um yeah, once I found the painting, I knew how to do it. It wasn't too bad, I think, because I was thinking about this, and I don't know if it's just me or if I'm you know being silly, but I played piano growing up, so I like
Hmm.
you know know how to read like music sheet and stuff. And so when I saw it, and I saw it is basically a music sheet, I was like, oh, okay, I know which kind of like which ones to go to and stuff. um, but once you beat Fuxi and Nuwa, you realize that there's an area that you can't go past, and you have to come back to this place. So if you didn't do Fuxianu at first and you did G, maybe that progression made a little more sense. But you have to, or maybe if you beat G, you have to go back up anyways. There's a little bit of backtracking, is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't do anything else in the Empyrean District, even though you know that there's something there that you have to do. And so I went to the G area, and I thought the G area was so much fun as well. It's one of the bigger areas in the game, and there's a lot of secrets that you can do and a lot of stuff to uncover. In this,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of puzzles. There's like an overworld puzzle where you have to find three different, like old statues that will open up this like cave, and you'll get so many rewards and so much cool stuff. Um,
Yeah.
but that's just an aside. You know, the whole area is really cool, and it's one of the only ones that actually makes you think how and where you have to go depending on what's going on in the overworld. Every other area is pretty linear, and you just go, okay, yeah, I'll go this way, and then maybe I can loop around, and then I'll go over there, and then whatever. But in this one, there's a series of like doors that you have to go through that will teleport you to a different part of the area, and then you have to kind of like intertwine yourself and kind of figure out how to get to the end, and then you fight G. And how was that for
Mm-hmm.
you?
I thought G was like the most unique boss, I think,
Mm-hmm.
because he has kind of like he has a move where he'll pull out these like spinning orbs, and each orb has a different symbol on it. And if you just let him do it, it'll pick an orb at random. But if you look at it and kind of figure out what each of the orbs does, you can figure out a way to like pick which one you want. And one of them is like a healing item, pretty much, where if you hit that one, he drops a healing item for whatever reason. I don't know why he would do that, but so I thought that was a really unique mechanic, and I thought some of the moves in this fight, where he tosses out a lot of like throwing knives, pretty much, and they kind of come from all different directions, and you have to hit this really specific pattern of like parry one way, parry the other, and just like flip back and forth, parrying each way. And I thought that was super cool. So I didn't have like I didn't really struggle with this boss a lot. Like I think I beat it in a handful of attempts. But I thought like mechanically it was really cool.
Completely agree. Same. I didn't think this boss was particularly difficult, but it was very fun. Super cool concept, and the dagger attacks were awesome. They nailed
Yeah.
it. I think that G kind of heals you because he knows that he's supposed to lose this fight, and he
Right.
doesn't want to like
Right.
mess with the kind of flow of life and how this path that he's on, like it has to end, and he's kind of tired of being immortal. So
Yeah.
I think for me that was like the game's way of saying, yeah, like you're supposed to defeat him. He needs to rest finally because the dude has been living for millennia and he is completely losing his mind, kind of.
Yeah.
So I think yeah, it's really interesting that G is a solar, it's a soul, because like the Soul Council was created not that long ago, relatively. But G is like
Mm.
one of the oldest creatures ever. Like, he's lived through so many rises and downfalls of like, different eras of the Solarian race. So it's, I don't know. I thought that was interesting that he was part of this group, you know?
Yeah, I feel like he was just kind of so we've kind of alluded to it. There's like this spiritual sect called the Fangxi that at one point in the history of the world was kind of the ruling class, but now, after their leader Lear kind of went into hiding, they've kind of moved into the background a little bit. And I think so. G is like a member of the Fengshi Guild, and I think he's basically just like a representative on the council. Was
Uh-huh.
like the impression I got. But we also learn that there's like a very specific reason why Eigong is interested in him. So,
Yeah.
like you said, we know that G is immortal, and Eigong figures this out and tries to use some of his like DNA, I guess, to figure out that immortality and create a cure to the Tianhua virus, which, as we know from being in the Empyrean district, is what starts causing the Solarians to like mutate into these horrible creatures. So a lot of lore implications there as well.
then at the end of the fight, you find one of the most fun characters, the Shanghai 1000.
Yeah.
Shanghai 1000. So we haven't talked about these little robots that are scattered throughout the world, but basically they're just like assistant robots, that like do whatever you ask them or like give you information, and you can either pay them for 100 gold and they'll give you like a copy of their chip, which you can then use in your hub so that you can find everything or all the items, and gives you like a checklist of every area, or you can kill them. And if you kill them, you don't have to pay them for 100 gold, and you can just do that anyways. So I used to, yeah, kill all of them. The guy didn't care. I was like, yeah, give me the chips. But this one, I couldn't get myself to do it. I was like, you're like a relic, man. You're like the first assistant
Yeah.
robot. I can't
Yeah.
get you. But no, it's just joking. But after this, you basically are in the final stretch of the game. You have every soul that you need, and you bring Abacus, the kind of, I think, G's DNA or something from G, and Fuxi and Nuwa's like uh, gene
The serum.
modification, the serum. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Abacus puts together a brace for you to wear, and you can finally defeat the immortal Solarians that have been infected by this mutation of the Tianho virus that Eigong made because of her like cure that didn't work. And you can go forward and kind of fast forward to the end of the game, basically. So why don't you walk us
Mhm.
through what that looks like and what happens in the true ending of the game, maybe?
So I think this point in the game is like a fork, basically. This is where you kind of have to decide how you're going to go about the ending of the game. And it relies a lot on some choices that you've made already. So at this point in the game, you've learned all the history of the virus, you've learned about the attempts to cure it and stuff like that. But you're also, like you said, gathering relics and finding all these things in the world and giving them to Xuan Xuan. And Xuan Xuan, as you go, is like learning all these new skills. He's really like developing as a person. And I feel like Yi is kind of recognizing that and sort of seeing that growth where he maybe didn't think it was possible in the past. And so if you give Xuan Xuan enough of those items, you kind of develop like a deeper relationship with him. And then same goes with Shenong, this like kind of reclusive figure who lives in the Four Seasons Pavilion. If you give him enough of the poisons, it triggers like an event where the village comes under attack. The
Mm-hmm.
Ape Men village comes under attack. Shenong goes to save them and winds up kind of getting beat up. And the previous leader of the village dies. And so, if you have gotten to that point where you've given him the poisons, you can go and save the village and save Shenong. And he becomes like the new leader of the village. And at the same time, you have this deep relationship with Xuan Xuan as well. And another thing is in G's area, in I think it's called the Grotto of a Thousand Scriptures or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. You can find the tomb of Lear. So Lear, who we've talked about, is this like elusive figure that's been appearing to you throughout the game and teaching you new combat skills. And you're also learning about his history and how he was the leader of the Fangxi and how the world was flourishing and making all these technological innovations under the Fangxi. And then Lear just disappeared. He was like, I'm done. I don't want to progress technology any further. I'm just going to, hang out basically. I'm going to vanish and we're just going to kind of stagnate for a little while. And so if you investigate the Fangxi Guild, properly in G's area, you can find the Tomb of Lear. And in the Tomb of Lear, you figure out that essentially to stave off the Jai Guild that Jai Quan, who we talked about, is a member of, this militaristic guild, Lear develops this basically atomic bomb where he says, I've got this bomb. If you don't chill, I'm going to use it, pretty much, to kind of force them into like an era of peace. So there's this era of peace where it's basically mutually assured destruction, and that happens before Lear kind of secludes himself. But that's like optional. You don't necessarily need to find that bomb. And so again, this is like a forking point in the game where if you've developed a deep relationship with the ape men through Xuan Xuan and Shenong, and if you found the rhizomatic bomb through Lear's grave, it opens up like a new avenue for the end of the game. But also at this point, you learn really how bad of a guy Yi is, pretty
Hmm.
much. So do you want to talk about what Yi's ultimate role in the Soul Council was?
Yes. So Yi develops so he's the soul of innovation. And so what he innovates is they figure out that they need a really precious resource to keep this project, this new Kunlun project, from working, to for it to work, excuse me. And the resource that they need is the basically the intelligence kind of some sort of species. Obviously, they don't want to use Solarians because why would you harvest your own people to power this project? So what they figure out is that there's a planet 500 light years away that have intelligent creatures that have big brains and all that, and they can harvest those brains to power the I think he that is to power the soulscapes, right? To
Right.
power
Yeah.
the soulscapes so that Solarians can sleep forever until a cure is found, and then eventually when the cure is found they can wake everyone up, heal them, and then they can like do you know continue the Solarian race. And
Yeah.
so
So you basically learn that Yi is the reason why they, New Kunlun, basically you realize is a spaceship
it's yeah.
that's been warped to Earth pretty much. And they're harvesting the energy of the sun to like power New Kunlun through the rhizomatic roots. And yeah, you learn that he's the reason why the ape men have been abducted off of Earth and kept in this like livestock pen, basically, which is the Peach Blossom
And every
Village.
so often they sacrifice
Harvest their
them and they
brains.
harvest
Yeah,
their brains. Yeah.
yeah. Like he's why Xuan Xuan was about to die at the beginning of the game. He's why Xuan Xuan's parents died, and I think it really ties into like that relationship you develop with Xuan Xuan throughout the game because the ending A, the like normal ending of the game, is pretty much just that Yi defeats Eigong and warps New Kunlun back to Panglai and basically goes like pretty much everyone remains in stasis. And if you watch the like that ending of the game, it alludes to like the entire planet of Panglai being in the soulscape, which requires a lot of brains from the ape
Hmm.
men, which means that there's basically just this ape men massacre happening. And Yi is basically just like by himself, not in the soulscape, trying to develop a cure, basically, while everybody pretty much rots away, like in the soulscape.
Yeah.
Um,
I did
but
see a theory
yeah,
that maybe Yi is in his own soulscape too.
yeah,
So
yeah, I
either
saw that
way,
too.
though, that's kind of like the normal ending where, like Ben said, you don't develop a deep relationship with Chuan Chuan, so Yi doesn't really care about the ape men at all, and he just cares about, yeah, like maybe trying to figure out a cure for the Solarians and just trying his best to keep the race alive and so that they can keep living forever, basically.
And again, it's what we talked about the push and pull between nature and technology. So that ending is basically saying rejecting nature. Like the Tianhua virus is pretty much supposed to be the end of the Solarians, but in that ending, Yi is like rejecting nature, which is like rejecting his sister, like basically
Yeah.
everything Hang stands for, and just like saying, I'm just gonna keep everything, in stasis basically until maybe we can figure this out, but probably not, honestly. But the other end of the game,
Hmm.
it really makes you work for it, if you
Um,
want to say that. Do you want to talk about that a
the
little bit?
other ending of the game is Yee's kind of like consciousness is he has a plan basically. He has a plan that he doesn't tell anyone, and you kind of piece it together, of course, because you know that the rhizomatic bomb is an atomic bomb, and he tells Kwafu and all the 8 men, hey, go to the galactic dock, get in a ship, and go home to your planet. Go back to your planet and live your life as a species like you were meant to do so, you know. And I'm gonna go confront Eigong. Don't worry about it. As soon as I'm done with her, I'm gonna come and join you guys. Is kind of what he tells everyone. So you make up your mind and you go to basically the point of no return in the game where you can't really go explore anymore. There's a series of things that you have to do to kind of get to Aegon, but let's just, you know, you do that.
Yeah,
There's some cool fights that you do, but basically you go and confront Aegon, and you find a lot about her backstory in this little area. Sorry, I just forgot to mention. Aegon's going crazy. She's going
yeah,
absolutely crazy this whole time. The 500 years of New Kunlun, she's just absolutely lost it. And she, as Ben mentioned earlier, she thinks that this fake cure that she invented that makes Solarians immortal is the way, the path forward, and is what she needs to do to keep the
yeah,
Solarian race alive. She just cannot let go of the fact that they're going to die, and she needs this technology to work so that the Solarians can live forever. She wants to infect the primordial root this with this virus, kind of, to make it live forever as well, and just create
yeah.
a hive mind of Solarians. But what ends
You
up
also
happening?
you learn something else really important as well, which is that Eigong, in her pursuit of immortality, pretty much essentially created the
Yeah,
Tianhua virus, which is killing all the Solarians. So
she's the
she
one who made it.
basically found a bit of like genetic information from the primordial roots in the Solarians' DNA, and she basically tinkered with it, trying to make them immortal like the primordial roots are, and in doing that caused the Tianhua virus. So she, in this pursuit of like immortality through technology, created this like world-ending virus pretty much, which is pretty huge. And I think
He
Yi
finds out.
discovers that that happened, and that's what kicks off the confrontation that we see at the beginning of the game, where I guess he goes to confront her about that, and she basically kills him.
Yeah, I think Aegon knew that like he wasn't gonna take it well, and he was gonna take, like, he wanted to stop the New Kunlun project after he figured that out. Obviously, you learned your parents died from the Tianhu virus. Your sister's going to be, I think at that point she wasn't infected yet, but she is going to be infected, and everyone's going to die. And
Yeah,
he was like, "You made this? What the hell?" Like, he went on like a rage and went to confront her, and she is super powerful, and so she kills him, or thinks she did, and basically throws him away. And it's like, oh, I don't know what happened to you. No one asked any questions. I have no idea. Like,
yeah,
um, and so you learn all of this information and you go fight her. And my God, is this boss fight the
dude,
coolest, but also the most
insane.
brutal boss fight I've ever fought in my entire life. I think in my gaming career, hands down, this boss fight is insane. It really is insane.
It's
Um,
up there.
yeah.
It's up there, like with the hardest bosses I think in gaming, because like my first attempt with it, like I think I died in a couple of seconds
Oh,
because
same.
she just like flashes across the screen, does a couple attacks, and your health bar is gone, and it's like what just happened. So like even that first phase is hard, and it
Oh
just gets
yeah.
more hard from there.
Every
Like,
phase is
oh
disgustingly
man,
difficult, and it's so hard that, like, going, okay, we were talking about Lady Ethereal and how it just took time to get to like the third phase. This one
yeah,
takes time, but also it takes all of your brain power
yes,
and your, I guess, your controller power to even go through the first phase. And then she just gets stronger, and then she gets stronger again in a third phase, and she
dude,
probably does the coolest anime kind of
yeah,
move that a boss fight has ever done, where she flashes across the screen and does like a three slash attack that takes up your whole screen.
Yeah.
Then she triggers it again and can do it like I think up to 3 times, and you just have to keep parrying and keep trying to dodge it by parrying. And I don't know.
And you
This
have to do
fight,
it perfect because
yeah,
if you
yeah,
if you don't get that perfect, it's over. You're done. And like getting to the third phase where that attack happens takes, I don't know, 10 minutes. Like it's not easy to get to the third phase. Like getting the regular ending of the game that we already talked about is the first two phases. So
yeah,
that is those first two phases are like the final boss. And then the third phase is just like additional insane difficulty craziness. So it's like getting to the third phase is hard enough. And then you get there and this insane attack happens at the very beginning and just kills you instantly. And you have so little time to react to it that it takes so long to learn it. I think I got to the final boss before you did.
yeah.
So, you know, we were both, I think we were both playing, and you saw me on Steam playing it. And you messaged me, and I said, like, dude, I'm going to the final boss right now. Like, I'm going to go do it. I'm going to finish the game. And then we didn't, like, we stopped talking there. And then the next night you saw me get back on Nine Souls and you were like, what's happening? Like, are you not done? Like, what's the deal? And I was like, don't talk to me right now. Like, you have no idea what you are in for. Do not talk to me.
You were so upset. Every 30 minutes, I was like, "So you done yet?" And Ben was like, "I'm gonna literally go invisible right now. Like, don't talk to
Yeah,
me right now."
because it's so hard and it was killing me, dude. I was trying so hard, but I got my vindication because you know a few days later you finally get to the boss, and then you start sending me the messages of like, this is insane. How do I do this? Like, what is happening
It
right
was so
now?
difficult.
So,
I think the
oh my
first
god,
phase was okay. So one thing, every single boss fight up to this point, whether that's a boss fight, a mini boss, or just like a big mob, regular monster, they have attack patterns. They have a maybe a second or 2 seconds of like a pause where you can get your attacks in. And
yeah,
yeah, obviously some of them like Jaikwan or maybe Lady Ethereal, they have like 5 or 6 different moves. And so when they do one that you don't know, it's kind of difficult to learn. So you have to kind of trial and error. All right, I figure it out. I'm good. I can go ahead.
the
Haigong has like so many attacks, so many attack variations, and she
yes,
doesn't stop. It's almost like
yeah,
they made like a randomness, uh, I don't know, function in this Eigong fight
definitely,
because she doesn't stop attacking, and you never know what's gonna come next. Like maybe there's a couple
yeah,
of things that you can kind of figure out, but besides that, she will not give you a second to breathe. And if you keep
no.
dodging, there's no like you can't just dodge. You cannot dodge anything. You have to parry uh most if not like 99% of the attacks basically.
Yeah, the mix-ups and like the attack variation was the hardest part to me because like you said, all the other fights are like pretty you learn what attack goes into what attack and kind of the chain, the rhythm that you can follow. But in Eigong, each attack can lead into like 10 different attacks. And so it's impossible really to like get in. Eventually you kind of get into it, like you just learn the kind of tells of the individual attacks well enough that
Yeah,
you can get into the rhythm. But my God, like the variations and the variations on variations were crazy. Like, and I think like we can have the discussion, but I think it made this one of the hardest bosses like in gaming in general.
Ben told me on Steam when I messaged him, I was like, "Hey, like this is really hard. I'm gonna take a break and come back tomorrow." Because I just couldn't get past the second phase. And you said you have to play this or you have to fight this boss until every single move that it has is burned into your brain. That's what you told me.
Literally,
And that's literally what you
literally.
have to do. Like because there's no pattern, because there's a randomness to it, you just have to learn every single attack that
Yeah.
Igon has and master it. You have to master it. And I don't know how you felt, but first phase, yeah, it was super difficult. The second phase, it opens with an attack that you would only see if you got to it, and so I was already like limping when I got there, and then I couldn't learn it because I would die immediately to it. So
Yeah, exactly.
that was really hard. And in the third phase, it's like another combination of different attacks that you've never seen. So it's really difficult, first, to get there, and two, to learn. But I don't know if this happened to you. There was a moment, obviously my last moment, when I actually defeated her, where because I had learned everything perfectly, I actually finished the fight with like 6 medicine charges. Like, you have to play
Yeah.
this boss fight so perfectly that when you do defeat her, you defeat her with like all of your health and all of your charges and everything, because there's no other way to beat her. You can't just like, oh, I'm gonna take like a bunch of hits and heal a bunch. Like, there's no time to do that. It's just,
Yeah.
you either
Yeah.
play her perfectly or you don't. And that, I thought that was so satisfying, because defeating her was the biggest relief, the biggest
Oh yeah.
accomplishment, the biggest everything that the game had to offer. And it just ends in such a, I don't know, incredible way. I loved it. I honestly,
Yeah.
I, even though it was so brutal and so difficult, there's not 1 ounce of like regret on it. It's just, it was awesome. I'm so glad that I spent that time like fighting it.
Yeah.
In hindsight,
So,
in the moment, I was upset, but in
oh yeah.
hindsight, it's
Oh yeah.
incredible.
Dude, crazy. I'm glad I got through it, but yeah, total same. It was so frustrating, so hard. Um, but the satisfaction, the payoff was awesome.
Yeah.
Do you wanna walk us through, give a little synopsis of like the true ending of the game?
Yeah. So in the true ending of the game, after you fight um, Eigong, when she had given herself that like cure basically to make herself immortal, and she kind of infected
Yeah.
herself to make herself a zombie, she also infected the primordial roots. And at that point, Yi knows that the only thing that he can do, and the plan that he had all along, was to activate this bomb and destroy New Kunlun. And he destroys himself as well, because there's no way he can escape.
Right.
And so basically, Yi jumps up and fires the arrow, because Kwafu had made it an arrow before, and destroys himself, New Kunlun, and the whole Solarian race. And
Yeah.
he ends basically what nature wanted to do all along, and kind of ends the life cycle of his race. And
Right.
then you get this beautiful moment when Yi kind of wakes up in the afterlife, and who does he see but his sister, who's been waiting for him for 500 plus years, and she like extends an arm to him, and he's finally like at peace, and he's not in turmoil with
Right.
like the nature versus technology thing. And
Right.
then the game ends.
Yeah, and so it's like kind of like you said, the natural conclusion of the Solarian race. Um, and in place of that, there's, the new opportunity for the ape men.
Yeah.
So Kuafu brings the ape men back to the pale blue planet, which is, basically Earth, which is basically in an ice age because New Kunlun has been harvesting all the energy from the star. Um, and so now that that's all gone, the planet starts warming back up and the ice starts melting, and the ape men can like make a life for themselves, which, you know, maybe there's a theory out there that this actually happened because what you learn in Eigong's research facility is that if you take out the gene from the primordial roots in the Solarians, they become house cats. So
Oh my
maybe
god, yeah.
maybe this is the human ape men origin story, if you will.
Look at
Maybe
that.
that's yes,
That's
that's Yi right
Ye's
there, his
his
descendant.
descendant. Thank you. I was trying to find that word.
But yeah,
Oh,
like a beautiful ending to the game, accepting the course of nature and accepting that, we don't need to be in this struggle with technology trying to like artificially prolong the existence of the race. Some things in the universe are just kind of meant to happen,
yeah.
and he kind of finally accepts that in this ending.
Yeah, it really is. It's beautiful. And Yi, the whole time, he didn't want to accept it, and at that moment where he does, it's great. I don't know. I loved it so much. And I actually like have used a little bit of the teachings of the game in my life. When I'm feeling anxious about something, or when something is going on, I'm kind of like, you know what? You have to let life just happen. You can't control
Yeah.
everything. And the Solarians and the New Kunlun was all about controlling the chaos that nature creates naturally in our life cycle, and you just can't do it. You just have to kind of let
Yeah.
life happen and be content with it. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have to try and like try to like do things for humans and like for your own life and try your hardest to accomplish the things that you want to do, but you need the balance of letting accepting life but also trying to make your life better. I don't know. There's a balance there that you have to, the yin and yang
Yeah.
that the game teaches you. It's
Yeah.
it's awesome.
Exactly.
Honestly, it's one of those games that it's funny. We just played Outer Wilds last month, and it's all about like harvesting the sun as well. And this game has harvesting the sun, and both games kind of teach you about life, and I love that that we have
Yeah.
this going for us right now.
Yeah. No, it was awesome. We'll talk about our overall thoughts in the game in the second half, but yeah, awesome story, awesome ending. Yeah, it was great.
Let's take a break and let's get to part two right after this. Welcome to part two of the show where we answer questions that you guys sent to us on our socials at Buenale Games on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. For now, maybe we'll create something in the future. Ben, why don't you go first?
Yeah, so we got a couple viewer questions for this one. I'm gonna start it off with one from Max J Gold. So Max, this is kind of a two-parter. So I'll start with the first half and then go to the second half.
Okay.
So Max says, in the current video game landscape, Souls likes are a dime a dozen. What do you feel are the avenues that best allow for one to differentiate itself? And do you feel, quote unquote, the formula worked in this 2D space?
Oh, that's a really good one. I think people love Souls, the FromSoft Souls games because it's not just a formula of like, oh, okay, it's like a difficult game that then you can die and you can recover your souls. They like it because they get put in this world that makes them feel some way. So the first three Dark Souls, it's such a dark fantasy, world that makes you feel scared all the time, that makes you feel like this has to count, and if it doesn't, I'm gonna have to backtrack and do things all over again. And it just gives you a sense of like urgency and emergency.
Right.
If games are able to translate that sense of like not fear but of uh yeah, urgency in a game, then it makes them a good Souls game, in my opinion, or Souls like. So
Right.
Hollow Knight, one a game that people really like. Why is it good? Well, obviously the art is awesome, but there's this like really weird darkness to it, and you need to uncover what this darkness is. And in Nine Souls, there's an overarching darkness again that you need to uncover. And I think that's what makes a really good Souls like to me. If they can and capture you not just in the gameplay, because yeah, anyone can make a Souls game, but
Yeah.
in the like overarching story, or maybe like it doesn't even have to have a story, just like in the world. If you're encapsulated in it, it's a good one.
Yeah. I totally agree. And it actually, so it gets into the second half of the question here, which is the whole time I played it, I was thinking of Hollow Knight. So if you've played that, which, both of us have, uh, how do you compare the games and boss combats and stuff like that between the two? So I'll just say from my perspective, I the relationship between the two games changed for me as it went. So when I first started playing the game, the first maybe 10 hours or so, I basically had the opinion that this was a Hollow Knight clone. I
Mm.
was like, there's so much similarity between the games. Like, the way the abilities unlock themselves and grant you different like movement abilities that open up different parts of the world, which is similar to all Metroidvanias, but still, I was like, just certain things were happening where I was like, this is kind of a reskin. Like the combat is obviously very different, but in those early stages, I was like, these are kind of the same game with like a different skin, but as the story unfolded itself and as different things, like the different types of parries and stuff like that, were added to the combat, my opinion changed completely. And I think my maybe it's controversial opinion, maybe it's not. I think this is better than Hollow Knight. I think the story is better than Hollow Knight by a lot. I think the combat is better than Hollow Knight by a lot. And yeah, I don't know. That's my opinion, but it's kind of crazy for me how it did almost like a complete 180 throughout the game. That what how do you feel about that relationship?
Yeah, I think I always went into this game thinking, oh, it's like Sekiro meets Hollow Knight or whatever. But to
Yeah.
me, the two games in their essence are so different. There's a question that we're gonna touch on in a second, but to me, Hollow Knight is a Metroidvania first and foremost, and a
Right.
Souls game second, whereas Nine Souls is a Souls game first and foremost, and a Metroidvania second.
Right.
There's no openness to the world that Hollow Knight gives you. Hollow Knight their exploration is such a huge aspect of it, and it asks you to go where you don't even think you can go. Whereas in Nine Souls, there's not really any of that. It's like you go, bro. You have to go to this area, and then there's this area and this area, and you can streamline it as much as you want, or you can like find a couple of secrets here and there, but it's not like they're super hidden, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Nine Souls gives you the movement and the combat mechanics and the freedom to fight however you want in such a amazing way that you just focus on the combat. Where in Hollow Knight, of course, the combat is very difficult and you have a lot of different skills, but it's more about the exploration and like uncovering the world by yourself.
Right.
That difference is what makes this game better for me as well. I don't think this game can exist without Hollow Knight,
No. Yeah. No.
but I think that it grabs the best parts of Hollow Knight and it makes it with its own twist, and it just makes it better because this is the types of game that I like. When I was playing Hollow Knight, sometimes I would get a little uh, overwhelmed by like my options of where I can go. Even at the beginning, you drop to the first area and then you can go to like 4 or 5 different places, and I'm like, I don't know where to go, you know. Whereas in
Yeah.
this
Same
game,
here.
you just kind of go one way and you don't look back. You just play, and yeah, I, don't know. I really I enjoy it more as well. I love Hollow Knight though, but this game is
Yeah, yeah. Like us saying it's better than Hollow Knight is a compliment to Nine Souls, not a diss to Hollow Knight,
for
because
sure.
Hollow Knight's an incredible game. And there's like things about Hollow Knight that I think probably does better than Nine Souls. Like the platforming in
Oh yeah.
Hollow Knight is way more challenging than the
And the
platforming in
exploration. I
this
mean,
game.
you find so many
Exploration, yeah.
secrets and so much cool stuff, so many characters, so many a lot more characters than in Nine Souls. You know that you
Mm-hmm.
can
Mm-hmm.
yeah talk to, discover, and everything. But
Yeah, agreed.
Roberto N95 from Instagram asked, "Would you say this game is more of a Souls-like or a Metroidvania?" So I'll turn that to you and see what you think.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely Souls like first and foremost. I yeah, and kind of for the reasons we already said, like the exploration is there, and you can like do the backtracking and stuff, which is kind of crucial to Metroidvanias. Um, but it's less to the forefront, and I
Mm-hmm.
think the combat, the Souls like combat, is like more so the primary focus of the game to
Yeah.
me, definitely.
I completely agree. I mean, I barely did any backtracking, to be honest. It's minimal. Whereas in most Metroidvanias, I mean, you do it all the time, you know, like
Yeah.
just the fact that you can't like put pins on the map, you know that it's not like a true Metroidvania. In every other
Right.
Metroidvania, bro, you're marking that map up, you know, because you know that you have to go back and check like every single ledge
Totally.
that you couldn't reach before. Now you can reach it. So in this game, that doesn't really happen.
Right. Yeah. Agreed.
You have a
So I've got a couple just questions that I wrote up myself.
okay.
Just a simple one. Would you replay this game?
Yes, I would. I think I loved it so much, but I actually was looking at the subreddit, and I think there's been like a boss rush mode or mod that have been, you know, whispers here and there about where you can basically do what Hollow Knight does, and you can just play bosses back to back to back to back and do like
Yeah.
the boss rush mode. I would do that a million times. I would love to do that. That's definitely I think maybe one day if I have the time, I would want to platinum the game, and because I missed a couple of things, I would have to replay it and do the whole thing. If it
Yeah.
gave me a new game plus, I would do it right now. I would do it like immediately. But it doesn't right now,
Okay.
so I might just wait. I mean, the game is new; it just came out a couple months ago. So if they add
I
something
don't,
in the future, yeah, I'll replay it for sure. What about you?
this is the type of game that I think I would replay in like 5 years.
Mm,
I don't know that I would be doing like a new game plus for this solely because I feel like the combat there's like there's not really enough combat avenues. Like
mm,
every build is kind of the same. There's a few different ways, and I want to we can talk about next maybe like which kind of builds we chose, but all the builds are essentially the same.
yeah.
And like if there were more kind of varied ways to go about it, maybe I would. But like I don't know that I would be doing New Game Plus like right away. This is the kind of game that I would come back to in a few years and like experience again, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Um, so this is my question as well. Do you think games like Nine Souls lose reach because they make their games unnecessarily gruesome?
Unnecessarily gruesome. Interesting. I don't know. I feel like the type of people that would be attracted to this game in the first place might not be put off by that. I think there's probably a small section of the audience that might be turned away. But if this game is advertised to you as Hollow Knight meets Sekiro, Sekiro is a gruesome game. Like
Mm.
it is, and you know maybe we'll play it in the future and discover that.
Yeah.
But Sekiro is a gruesome game. So if you love Sekiro and someone tells you this is Sekiro meets Hollow Knight, you're gonna go into it kind of not maybe not expecting it, but ready for that.
Yeah.
Um, so there might be a small aspect of it, but probably not, in my opinion. Did was there a moment where you were like, this might be too much or anything like that?
Not personally, but so I haven't played Sekiro and I've played Hollow Knight. So when it was Sekiro meets Hollow Knight, I was expecting more of a Hollow Knight. And Hollow Knight, anyone can play that game. You know,
Yeah,
it gives such a it's such a beautiful game that we all love, and it doesn't have to be gruesome. Like
no,
so that's why when I first started playing the game and I realized how it shocked me. It shocked me honestly. Like from the get go, where when you have to save Schwan Schwan from getting decapitated, I was like, "What the hell?" You know, it. I didn't realize it was gonna be like that. I wasn't put off by it. I liked it. You know, I enjoyed that a lot. But I just wonder, like a game from not a huge studio like Red Candle, maybe they could have reached more people without the gruesomeness. Not that I want it to go away, but I just it's kind of like one of those developer decisions that you make at the beginning and you kind of stick to. But I wonder if they can do the same thing except no guts spilling out from anyone anymore. I don't know.
right. I think it adds to it a little bit because it like there are the moments, like we talked about of Yi, basically mind controlling Gao Mang and like leaving her to just be this like brainless mess and like all the characters mutating into these like horrific mutations. And I think parts of that kind of underscore the brutal nature of the game and like the brutal thing that's happening in the game where
Mm.
like this virus is killing everyone. If we don't figure out a way to stop it, that's just the end of the race. And so I think there's like that some of the brutalness adds to that in my opinion and helps like reinforce different themes of different characters like Yi specifically. But yeah, I think the, probably the reach could have been a little bigger with it, but yeah, I don't know, it's hard to say.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, and for the record, I love the game the way it is. I was just
Yeah,
wondering,
totally.
like, you know,
Same.
if it was a little toned down.
Sure.
All
Yeah.
right, go ahead. Your turn.
Something we kind of already talked about, but what is the hardest boss fight for you if you kind of normalize them? Like Eigong is obviously the hardest, like
Yeah.
no question about it. But for like the maybe it was like, the first boss where you were still grappling with the combat a little bit. Like if you kind of normalize them, what do you think you struggled the most with?
Normalizing meaning that I have the same skill level going into all of
Yeah,
them,
like
kind of.
kind of like accounting for the stage in the game
Oh, okay.
when you encounter them.
I still think that Fuxi and Uwa are is the hardest boss. I just think that yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I think just the attacks being able to hit me when I wasn't expecting them to, and kind of changing and giving you that like, okay, it's a pattern, but also it's slightly more than just that. I struggle with that a little bit.
Sure.
I don't think any other boss except that one, not counting Eigong, gave me as much trouble.
For me, I think it was Lady Ethereal, just because it took me the longest to like figure out the dance, like you
Hmm.
called it, to learn the steps to the dance. I think that fight took me the longest, just because there's that additional component of it of trying to find the real one. Like, in the mantis fight in Hollow Knight, which I compared this to, all of the mantises are real. Like you dodge one and you can hit it and the damage counts. In this one, there's all of the attacks coming, but you have to sift through them to find the real, Lady Ethereal, and you can't damage her until you do that. So I think that one for me, like accounting, kind of normalizing it was the most difficult. And additionally, like the length of the fight made it hard too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it is so long. My God. Ben, if it
Yes.
meant you would live another year, would you drink Shenong's regurgitated alcohol?
Oh
And
my
how
god,
many
bro.
times would you do it? And let's say there's 10 max times, so 10 additional years of life.
This- I don't know. It's terrible. I don't know. If you told me, like, guarantee this will add 10 years to your life,
If you drink
I
it
guess
10
I'm
times,
doing it.
10 regurgitated drinks, you know?
I guess I'm doing it. Like,
Yeah.
if it's a guarantee, but if it's just like, hey, you want to try this? No. Like, no, dude. No, I
Listen, he
don't.
likes it at the beginning, you know? He likes it.
That's true. That's true.
Uh that's good though. I would probably do 5. I would do 5, you
Okay.
know.
Fair.
5 years, 5 drinks. Why not? I
Fair.
don't want to, because again, the balance, right, Ben? The yin and the yang.
Yeah. The
Don't
balance,
don't go
right?
too
Right.
ham on it. I
Sure.
have a bunch more questions. I don't know if you have any more.
That's kind of it. Yeah, all the other ones I have we already touched on kind of in some fashion. So yeah.
Okay, I have one question, and then I have a bunch of rapid fire questions, and then we
Okay.
can do a ending note to the game. So this is more of a broad question, but did you start trusting the developers at any point in the game? And what I mean by that is we've played a bunch of RPGs, Souls games and Hollow Knight and all that, and games always have branching paths, and you kind of go one way and you're thinking, oh my god, did I go the right way? Like, am I gonna find a treasure if I backtrack and go the other fork of the path? And then you kind of have this gamer scratch of the head that always happens where you
Yeah.
have so many decisions and you don't know if you're going the right way or not, or if you're missing something.
Right.
Did you ever feel that that happened a lot in this game? And did you ever start trusting the developers of the game, saying, okay, I'm gonna be able to loop back and check everything out?
I did because I learned that this is more of a linear game than Hollow Knight. Like in Hollow Knight, there's so many of those moments where you're in the middle of a stage and there's four different paths going in every single direction, and it's like if I go this way, maybe I'm continuing along the same path that I thought I was, but I might be going somewhere completely different, and that's going to take me down a rabbit hole that I have no idea what's going on, right? But in this, once you kind of learn that this is a little more of a linear game than Hollow Knight is, then there's less of that like choice anxiety. There's less of that kind of paralysis of like, which way do I go? It's a little easier to just be like, yeah, I'm going to go down that path. Like if it doesn't progress the area, then it's going to be like a little kind of side area that I can just complete and come back to it. So yeah, I think so. I think so.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. It just there's a moment in the game where you're like, all right, yeah, like I'll just keep going, and I know that I'll be able to loop back and take a shortcut or
Yeah.
something. Or if there's
Yeah.
no path, then I know that I can come back and there a path will open for you. I think they did pretty good with intertwining the whole thing. Okay, Ben, get ready. Limber up. Rapid fire questions. Give me the first, your first thought. Okay.
Okay.
Favorite friendly character.
My favorite friendly character was Chayu, and it makes me sad because I didn't complete his like storyline by the end of the game. I don't know how. I guess I didn't spend enough money, um, but I didn't like get his ending, which really
Oh
bummed me out
no.
when I got to the ending. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
but
you
it is
have
him.
to.
I thought he was the most entertaining character and
I
like the most fun to interact with.
I wrote him down as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to buy everything basically, and then he tells you,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I have enough gin. Thank you so much. I'm gonna go, fight my brother or whatever.
Yeah.
The fight wasn't. It was fine. I mean, I think I died once against his brother. It wasn't like that big a deal. But yeah, it was cool. He dies also at the end. I don't know if you
Yeah. I
know that.
saw. I went
Yeah.
back and saw it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay, okay. Favorite foe.
Oh man, favorite foe. I think in terms of like the most fun, maybe G, just because of like the interesting mechanics to that fight. Um, yeah, probably G.
Cool. I said Jaquan.
Yeah,
Favorite
fair.
area.
Favorite area. Maybe the Grotto of a Thousand Scriptures, the G's area, kind of funnily enough, just because I feel like there were more little secrets and puzzles in that area than anywhere else. And it was like a little bit more of a task to get through the area and to like find the correct way to go than some others. So yeah, that's probably mine.
What other weapon would you want Yi to use?
Ooh, good question. I would say maybe I don't know, maybe like a heavy attack, just giving him some sort of heavy attack. And actually, I mean, you can kind of do that, but it's more of a charge attack. But like maybe, a bigger sword on his back or something that you can whip out in like a big kind of sequence or something like that might have been cool. Um, yeah, I don't know.
I like it. I like it. What is the biggest gold amount lost because you couldn't recover your soul?
Oof, man. Probably like I don't remember a specific instance, but probably like 2000 or something like that. I don't know. It was those moments are pretty tough.
Yeah. I remember one stuck with me. I didn't really think about this except right at the end, kind of like in the last couple areas. I lost 5,500 gold in one loss. It was brutal.
Oh man. That's brutal.
Yeah. Ballpark, how many tries did it take you to beat Eigong?
I don't know how many tries. It took me probably like 3.5 hours of gameplay though. Like I sat down for that first night and tried to beat it and spent maybe an hour on it, couldn't do it. Sat down for like the second night, spent probably like an hour and a half and, got through the first two phases and started learning the second. Couldn't do it and then had to like come back a third time and that's when I finally was able to do it. So, number of tries, I don't like want to know the answer to that question, but yeah, it was at least 3 hours it took me.
Yeah. And this is more of a deep question. Would you have left Penglai to go to New Kunlun as either a passenger or a soul? Or would you have stayed in Penglai and lived your last few moments with your friends and family?
Oh man, dude, that is tough. I feel like as a person, like I'm a scientist basically, right? Like not to get into anything personal, but like I'm a scientist in my life and you kind of are too.
Hmm.
So I feel like I might have been convinced to go on New Kunlun and this like pursuit of science and trying to figure out the cure to this thing. But if it came down to it, because we know not everyone on New Kunlun had the opportunity, or not everyone on Penglai had the opportunity to go on New Kunlun, right? I think it was only 100,000 people,
Yeah.
which is not a lot in like the population of a planet. So I feel like just playing the odds, we may not have made it. So if I was with my friends and my family, I think I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I had the exact same answer. I think like as a person, yeah, if I had the opportunity, I probably would have gone. But as a human, I think not the right thing to do, but I don't know. Maybe staying with your friends and family and enjoying your last few moments of life is probably like the not the again not the right choice, but a choice that maybe gives you more peace.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's all the questions that I have. So let's talk a little bit about just builds, and then we can tie a boat in. So
Yeah.
what you know jades specifically? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you can kind of like play around with. The skill tree, everyone kind of goes through it the same way. But you have a jade system,
Hmm.
you have three different talismans, you have three different arrows, and then you have three different talisman bonuses. So let's go through them a
Right.
little bit and see what you chose or what you like to do.
Yeah, the thing I like ended up with was the flowing water style talisman where normally when you do the talisman attack, you dodge through an enemy, you attach the talisman to them, and then you have to sit there for a second and like charge the talisman, and then it explodes. And so there's one where you can like sit there for a longer time and charge it longer and get a bigger explosion. Or there's another one, which is what I use, the water flowing water style, where you just dodge through them and attach it, and you don't have to charge it at all. And then there's like a slight delay to where it instead of charging it, there's just like a second delay, and then it explodes. But you don't have to sit there charging. You can like continue fighting the boss while that happens. So that's what I wound up doing, and I coupled that with the jade. I think it was the porcupine jade, or I forget what it was called, but it's the one where a perfect parry inflicts some internal damage to the enemy. And then, so basically, I was just focusing on parrying, build up some internal damage, hit them with a few attacks occasionally, and then do like the flowing water style talisman whenever I could to kind of cash in on that internal damage. And then I also used like the jade that allows you to heal some of the internal damage that you take with your slash attacks. So I kind of use that as a little bit of sustain. And I coupled that with a jade that converted some of the damage you took into internal damage. So that I guess gave me a little more tankiness. Like it made some of the damage into internal damage, which I could then heal with slash attacks. So that was kind of my final build. That's kind of how I approached it. What about you?
I think throughout the areas, I love to experiment and do different things. Uh, I love the do slash attacks quicker, but you take internal damage, but then you heal it back with your slash attack. So I had that combo going a lot just to go through areas faster and just kind of going ham on that. But like and I also use the three key blast, so the regular key blast, so, because that would give you an
Okay.
arrow back. And I mean, I used that throughout the whole game until the end. Against Eigong, I like you did the water flow. I did the my parry deals internal damage, which I think I had on
Mm.
the whole time. I mean, I used that throughout the whole
Yeah,
game.
so good, so
So good.
good.
It's the I
Probably
don't
probably
think you
one of the
can.
best jades in the game.
Yeah, I don't think you can go through Icon without that, honestly. Um, but what I did against her was I used the jade. It's a red jade. I don't know the name. Where on your third attack, on the slash attack, it hits like a lot harder and it's like a bigger attack. But it
Yeah,
takes three key blasts or three key
yeah.
charges to do it. But because I was using the water flow, it only took one charge. I didn't
Mm.
really. I had excess charges, and that's what
Yeah,
really
and
made
you're
me
parrying like 10 attacks per second in the
exactly.
Eigong fight. So it's not. Yeah, I did the same thing. So I didn't use that sort of jade you mentioned the whole time because like in certain I tried using it maybe halfway through and I felt like it was limiting my talisman damage because I was consuming the chi charges to do the big third attack. But in the Eigong fight, like you have more chi than you know what to do with
Yeah.
because you're constantly parrying. So I put that in there, and the extra damage definitely made a difference.
Agreed, agreed, agreed. And then for my talisman bonus, I always use the gold one. I was like, I'm a gold boy. Give me more gold.
Okay,
So I
I
was
think
always
I
trying to kill enemies with the talisman so I could get like plus 15 or plus 20 gold or whatever.
I think I did the health one with that, where it gives you a small amount of HP back with a successful talisman explosion. But I'm not sure. Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. I'll mute that. I'll mute that part. Cut that. Cut that. Cut that. To put a bow on this game, Ben, I'm gonna go first. I absolutely love this game. If it wasn't for Balatro, this would be my GOATY of the year, or I guess the GOATY. This would be the GOATY, the best game. I loved it so much. It's everything that I want in a game is inside of this one, and everything that makes a game great, and they do perfectly. From the music to the sound effects of a parry or an attack to incredible boss fights and incredible story that I didn't even think it would have. The game took me by surprise, and I loved it so much, and I'm giving it an A+. This is an A+ for me.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree. Like, if this isn't an A+, I don't know what is. So it's got to be like I already said, the story incredible, the combat incredible, world design, audio design, like you said, just so good. If this isn't an A+, I don't know what's an A+. So it's got to be.
So good. That is the book report. Buena Games. Put it down. Put it in the book. Stamp
Bang.
it. Pop, pop, pop.
Put a stamp effect on the screen.
Stamp
Bang,
effect on the
A+.
screen. Yeah, I definitely know how to do that for sure. What other games have you been playing?
Dude, so you're going to be happy to hear this. So I just got back from a trip and I needed something to play on the plane. And what just had a mobile release but Balatro?
Oh my, you haven't been texting me? I am so upset with you.
No, I wanted to save it for this moment.
Oh, I am so excited. Tell me everything. How do you feel?
Dude, it's so fun. I need to still get into like the repeatability aspect of it. But yeah, I mean, I locked in. I got like a sick little flush build going,
Hell yeah.
racking up the big points. And yeah, I beat like the, I guess, main loop on like my second try, I want to say. But yeah, I wanna keep playing it and kind of exploring all the different builds and getting better.
That is awesome, Ben. I'm so excited. Listen, flush builds, that's what you want to do in the get-go, but you're going to go crazy mode later. I just had a build. Okay, the game that I've been playing a lot this month is also Balatro because I bought it on mobile as well, baby. I can play anywhere now. Good. I play at work. No, just kidding. I don't play at work. I play anywhere and everywhere. My bathroom breaks are 20 minutes longer for sure. My productivity is going down. I didn't realize how easy the first decks are when you're not playing like the stakes. Sorry, that's the word I'm looking for. The first few stakes are a lot easier. The later stakes they get so hard. So you can get so many fun builds. I made a high card build, and it gave me my first E number. So I got my highest hand card was 1.5 E to the 12th, which is like 1 trillion, I think.
I didn't know that was possible. I was getting 100,000 and being like, dude, I'm killing this
Before
game.
that, like a billion something was my most, but now I got to the trillion. Ben, you have no idea.
I do not understand.
I took a little video and I didn't know you were playing, so I'm gonna send you a little video right after this to show you my build.
Dude,
but
that's crazy.
Dude, Balatro is a game that like Nine Souls again. If Balatro didn't exist, Nine Souls would be my game of the year. But I just cannot give it to anything other than Balatro. Balatro is like the best game. Balatro. So Alan, our friend Alan, is playing Nine Souls, and he actually texted me yesterday. He's in the final boss, and he told me something like, "Man, I love this game," and I said, "Yeah, this is my favorite game of the year." And then he says, "Oh, I think Balatro is my favorite game of the year," and I was like, Balatro has been such a big part of my life this year that I didn't even realize that it was released this year. I forgot. I felt like I've always had Balatro in my pocket my whole life, bro.
You're gonna have Balatro withdrawal,
dude. Every time I stop playing Balatro, it just brings me back in, man. I love it so much. But speaking of,
You're the meme of the guy laying in bed and his wife is laying next to him, being like, "I bet he's thinking about other women," and you're just laying there like, "What deck am I gonna build next?"
dude, 100%. I'm thinking about Balatro and I'm thinking about Video Game Book Club, baby. That's what
Let's
I
go.
think about at night. Thinking about games that we're gonna think about, Benny. Did you decide what game we're gonna play for October 2024?
Okay, so Nine Souls, phenomenal game. I think we can all agree a little bit heavy. It's a little bit of a heavier game. Very intense, very mentally exhausting in some instances. So I think we should pick something. It's a little chill, kind of funny, happy-go-lucky a little bit. So it just released, and I think we're gonna play the Plucky Squire. So
The
it
Plucky
just came out.
Squire.
Devolver Digital, has put out some really great games. I've seen a few clips. I'm sure a lot of people have. It's been posted a lot of different places. Kind of a shorter game than what we've done, maybe around 8 hours. But it looks like it's really fun. It looks like the vibes are high, so let's do it.
I am super pumped. It's kind of like a Zelda like, right?
Right.
Which is but in like a comic book setting or something like that. I
Hmm.
don't know much about it, but I'm excited to play it. Have you tried it already?
I haven't. I haven't
Okay,
yet.
okay. All right. Well, I'm super looking forward to it. I think if people want to play along, it's free on PlayStation Plus. So just try it.
Nice.
Try it without any worries, and then come back and ask us your questions so that we can have a beautiful video game book club discussion about the Plucky Squire, which we'll be releasing at the end of this month. So
Probably going to be a little bit of a shorter episode than this one. This one, a lot to talk about, rightfully so, with Nine Souls. But probably next time maybe a little shorter. But
if you
we'll
made
we'll
it
see.
all the way to the end, thank you so much. I know that this was a
Yes.
super heavy
If you
episode,
made it
but
to the end, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments that you stuck around.
let us know and tell your friends to join Video Game Book Club. We're going to drop our
Yes.
Discord server so that we can actually have like a place to coexist
Mm.
in the Video Game Book Club sphere. So,
Dude,
tell
I got off my flight. I told the pilot to join the video game book club. I told the
dude,
stewardesses. I said they should join. I went. I was in New York. I went to a few bagel shops. I told the bagel guys to join. Yeah, subway conductors. They're all joining the club, bro.
dude, Ben has never spoken to more people in his life, baby. He just talks to everyone about Video Game Book Club,
That's a
and so
fact.
should you. So should you. Uh,
Yes.
Thanks again for joining us for another episode of Video Game Book Club. 5 games we've played, and a sixth one coming your way. That's awesome, Ben. Thank you so much for being a part of this with me. I really appreciate you, buddy. And yeah, thanks everyone, and we'll see you on the flip side.